we're joined by Antjuan Seawright. He's a CBSN political contributor and Democratic strategist and the CEO of Blueprint Strategy, as well as Shermichael Singleton, a Republican political consultant. Thank you so much for joining us, guys.
Thank you.
So I guess my sort of first question is, the number one question that you hope will be answered with the release of this report. I'm going to start here.
Well, forget about the release of the report. There's a step one before that, and that's this 9:30 press conference. I think it's premature for any of us to speculate about the report until we go through this phase of the press conference. Three things to remember about this. One, the devil's in the details. So what he says in his press conference and how that translates or relates to the report. The second thing, timing is everything. Here we are, the Thursday before Good Friday. The president has a planned vacation already. It's Holy Week. Timing is everything. This seemed to be planned. And thirdly, teamwork makes the dream work. It's very evidently clear that the White House and the AG have been talking to each other. They've planned out how they're going to lay this out, what the response will be. And anytime President Trump is doing toe touches and cheering something on, we all should be concerned. And he's excited about what we expect to hear from this report.
Well, to that point, I'm curious, because you heard in Paula's piece where the president was quoted as saying, you'll see a lot of strong things. What does he already know?
I mean, look, I don't think there's any surprise, or at least there shouldn't be any surprise, that the president has been talking with his appointed attorney general.
Fair.
That's an expectation that I would have regardless of what the president's political party would be. But look, I think what's important here is the obstruction piece. Why didn't Mueller find enough evidence to prove beyond a burden of proof that the president did indeed obstruct justice? We know there was no conspiracy or collusion. I think we're pretty clear on that. This now becomes a political ball, if you will. And I don't think Democrats, while they may want to pursue impeachment charges, if there is some indication that the president did do something that they believe he did not do, I don't think there's a political appetite for that. The Russian investigation is the 6th most important issue for Democratic voters. It's the 10th most important issue for all voters writ large. So again, I think while some people in the Beltway, if you will, may think that this is a critical issue, most voters are worried about bread and butter issues. The president still has a strong economy. There are some other tangible things that he can point to that voters are going to look at and say, you know what, this is more important, this impacts my life more directly than this Russia report.
I can see Antjuan wants to jump in, but I want you to respond to what he said about the optics, because I think a lot of people are questioning, why release this 400-page document now? Why have a press conference before any of us know anything about the content, so we can't ask any pertinent questions? How are we to perceive that?
Well, look, I mean, the Attorney General did say, I guess a month ago, that at some point he would go through the process by working with the special counsel, or also working with the legal department within the Justice Department, of trying to figure out what can be released while not releasing underlying evidence. He is meeting that goal. Look, the reality is, of course, you're going to want to set some type of a tone here. I am not surprised by that being a political strategist. I would hope that they would set a tone before this thing comes out, because you want to try to mitigate as much damage to the president as possible. That's all politics. The report's going to come out. We will all have an opportunity to question and challenge the veracity of Attorney Barr's statements at some point later today.
But we may have that opportunity, but it will not be in the same light we would if the report was out without the redactions and there was no conversation between the White House and the AG.
I disagree with that.
Here's the problem. Leave the interpretation to us and lawmakers on whether this fully exonerates the president. That's number one. And number two, timing. Again, timing is everything about this. The longer the water sits, the weaker it becomes. Coffee, soda, you name it, the longer it sits. We've been going through this process for months now. There's all been a spirit of high expectation and anticipation. Now here we are, a press conference in which there will be no chance for anyone to ask questions unless we go through this exercise of Congress wheeling people in to testify. People say no, back and forth. And we'll go through this process. And what was most important, we will not hear from Mueller. We will hear from Trump's appointed AG, the person who did the work, the person who did the research, the person who wrote the research paper will not be there to defend or talk about the research.
To that point, and I did see this in the makeup room upstairs when we were getting ready. CNN was reporting that Mueller does not want to be at the press conference. And of course, we all know that he decided not to draw a conclusion as to to whether or not there was.
We also know that
obstruction
he
of
chose
justice.
not to be involved in the writing of that 4-page summary,
Right.
if you will.
Congress does have the ability to subpoena Robert Mueller to testify.
They
Number
probably
one.
will, yeah.
Number two, let's
And
go
that
back.
would be the right place to have
Correct.
it.
Pelosi and Schumer has already said they will.
Let's go back to Watergate. Leon Jaworski, who was a counselor during the Watergate scandal, he went to the grand jury and ultimately to a judge to issue a direct report directly to the House Judiciary because of his concerns about the White House at that time. Robert Mueller had the same opportunity to do the same thing. He did not. I think it is legitimate to beg the question, why didn't he, if there was legitimate concern about what the administration would attempt to do with this report?
Him going to the Congress now will do nothing but add fuel to the political fire, right? And it's going to drag this issue out, and it'll make it a political issue. To a point you made earlier, as someone who works in Democratic politics with most of the various committees, Democrats have not put their marbles in the Mueller basket. In fact, we've been more focused on the bread and butter issues.
Candidates have.
Even the Congress.
Oh, I disagree with that.
Well, no, you're making the assumption that Democrats can't investigate and legislate. I think I said to you before, it takes two to make the thing go right.
You guys aren't legislating, though.
Of course we are. We've passed
Nadler,
Schiff. No. Again, there's investigating, there's legislating. When you look at the bills being passed, the 35-day shutdown that happened, when you look at H.R. 1, when you look at the Charleston loophole bill, we've passed game-changing legislation.
That has no ability to pass the Senate, so there's no bipartisanship at all that even exists
but
here.
we can't control the thermostat we don't. We can't control the thermostat we don't have our finger on.
Here's the best part about watching the two of you. The conversation will go on, especially amongst the Beltway boys, right?
It will. It will.
And guess what? Everyday voters could care less about this report.
I agree.
They do not know what the special prosecutor does, who he is, and guess what? When they cast their vote, it'll be the reason people voted for Democrats in the midterms.
And I
quality of life issues.
I got to be honest with you. Even if there is a fire alarm in this report, I wonder how strongly it will resonate because people are so sort of tuned out. Like I've just heard enough. Right? Will they miss?
This is going to further. This is going to further divide. Democrats are going to go in their corner. Republicans are going to go in their corner. And independent thinkers are going to say, you know what? This is not the reason we're going to show up and vote either way.
So
Correct.
do you think that an unredacted version of this report needs to be released at some point?
No, absolutely not.
You know, really, because
Absolutely
a lot of Republicans believe that it should be.
I disagree with them. I think underlying evidence should be issued to both the House Judiciary and Senate Judiciary, but that underlying evidence should not be released to the American public. I do think as much as possible should be released to the public, but we don't need methodology, other incriminating evidence that could implicate people who are technically sort of innocent in this thing. Those things should not be released to the American public.
This is a conversation of convenience because just a few months ago, the Republicans were unapologetic about the Nunes memo, which in the intelligence community had fully warned them, do not do it, don't do it, don't do it. And then it came. So this becomes a conversation of convenience. But again, we're not changing anybody's hearts and minds. This is going to drag out. Democrats are going to haul people in. Republicans are going to go in their corner and say it's just a witch hunt.
But the question is, does this move the needle for 2020? I do not think it will.
All right,
that is a good question.
We got to keep the train chugging. The producers are saying, let's go, let's go, let's go.
Shermichael, Antjuan.
Thank you. Thank you very much.